Well, for more on the global plastic problem and solutions, I'm joined by environmental justice advocate Kari Fulton. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm sure this is unwelcome news for the plastics industry. What actually happens to an industry like this when your product, which was in use for so long, has suddenly become something taboo?
You innovate. That's basically the best thing that you can do. I'm certain that they will take a short-term loss, but the companies that are really competitive and that know how to do proper business will look at all the alternative solutions that are already out there and they'll innovate.
And so how are you seeing plastic manufacturers reacting so far? Are we seeing any sort of changes or sort of adaptation?
I think you do. You do see certain changes. I mean, even when we think about BPA, when BPA became really popular, where people were saying this does not need to be in our plastics or in our cans, you started to see manufacturers taking that out. So what you're seeing now is different companies that are looking at different solutions. Washington, D.C., for instance, decided to make a ban on plastic straws. So what you're seeing is more companies bringing in paper straws, and that's an obvious solution that you're seeing is that people are looking at what other alternative means can we create to allow for the same convenience of plastic, but not the same level of pollution.
So given that consumers do essentially vote with their dollars when they spend, how are plastic manufacturers being impacted by this increased scrutiny on their industry?
I don't think that they're feeling it as much as we would hope that they would feel it. If they were really feeling it, we would see a more drastic change, but plastic is so convenient. Now, you may have places like Tanzania, you may have places like DC that are changing their laws and looking at ways to reduce plastic, but when you think about the global conversation, plastic is still very popular.
So is it actually possible for them to actually make their products eco-friendly, or does the nature of the material really not make that an option?
Now, when we're talking about specific plastics, no. It is a byproduct of petroleum, and it is also something that is not necessarily eco-friendly. Now, are there ways to create something that is like a plastic that we're traditionally used to that can be eco-friendly? Yes.
Now, we know that plastics have really been the workhorse material from a number of industries, whether it's cars, electronics, building materials, but then you also have this issue of single-use plastics. Are those two separate issues when it comes to pollution?
They are one and the same, but they are different because when we're talking about single-use plastics, you're also talking about a lot of thinner plastics that are a lot harder to recycle. And I think that is where we have the bulk of those issues. And we're also talking about unnecessary pollution. Why are we wrapping an orange that already has a wrapping, that is its skin, and we're wrapping it in a plastic bag? It doesn't even make sense.
So what about consumers themselves? Have we seen any sort of meaningful change in consumer behavior that's really pushing for the banning of plastics?
I think we do. I think when you see places like California and you see places like DC where they're putting stipends, where they're putting fees on plastic bags. Now in DC it's 5 cents, but if you go to California it's about 10 cents. And that little amount right there will change the way that you go into shopping, and even being more conscientious about, let me make sure that I have some reusable bags in the car just in case. Let me figure out a way that I can remind myself, or maybe I'll just get less stuff and just hold it in my hand.
Now, managing future behaviors when it comes to consumption is one thing, but what about all these tons of plastics that are already in circulation? How do you responsibly address those or repurpose them?
That's a great question, and I think that's a question that lots of people are going to try and figure out. I know that there are different companies that are looking at how do we take the plastics that are in the water and repurpose them. How do we pull those out? How do we do what they call trash traps? You might see those in some of the rivers, and where we can capture up the trash. It looks like there might be a picture of that. But the problem that we see is that these issues are so big and they're so numerous that the question is, do we even have the capacity to really solve those issues? And I don't know if we do. And so I think that it's going to create a new reality for us.
Now, one solution that has been mentioned is the role of the circular economy in reducing the plastics that are out there and future use. How do you see that playing out?
I don't think there's anything new about the circular economy. These are things that we used to do when people used to go to the milkman. Then you would leave your glass bottle out so that they could pick it back up and then bring it right back to you. And I think we have to get back to that ideology of that, okay, if you go to Mom's Organic, shouts out to Mom's Organic, it's a local grocery store, they allow you to refill your apple cider vinegar, your honey, your oils, your basic essentials. And so that really helps with reducing, and that creates that circular economy as we talked about.
Certainly have to be more mindful with our shopping habits. Thank you so much. Always good to have you on. Environmental justice advocate Kari Fulton there.
Thank you.